All right, it is time to talk about my Worlds meta predictions. Of course, Worlds is literally tomorrow. So it's a great time now to talk about what I think will do well at the World Championships, my predictions for what decks will perform well, what decks might flop, where decks might place in the tournament, what deck might win the tournament, all that stuff I'll talk about in today's video. Like I said, Worlds is literally tomorrow. So it's just around the corner, and I think it's a great time to finally talk about what I think will do well at the World Championships and give my predictions on everything, and we'll figure things out. And it's always fun to look back here and see how right I was, how accurate I was with my predictions, especially since it is the World Championships, of course. Now, if y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're getting very close to 16,000 subscribers. And if you're new here, of course, leave a like and all that good stuff if you enjoyed the video and all that stuff. So let's get into it here. So starting things off, Regidrago is, of course, considered to be the big deck to beat going into the World Championships. Is it going to win the tournament, though, is going to be the question. Now, I do think Regidrago is going to be popular. Very good chance, the sense of actually being the most played deck in the room. So there's a good chance Regidrago might win if it's the most played deck, right? But the other problem is everybody is looking to beat Regidrago. Now, this deck is arguably pretty hard to counter due to the options it has with all the big dragon Pokemon like Dragapult, Goodra, and Kyurem. And, you can experiment with stuff like Noivern and whatnot. But I do think Regidrago is primed to be in a good spot for Worlds. I, at the very least, think there will be one in top 8, at the very least. And it is probably going to be the most played deck in the tournament due to how strong it is, how hyped up it is. And I think a lot of people are just very much sold on Regidrago right now, that they're just like locked in on the deck and are going to play it no matter what. And I think, yeah, like I said, there's a good chance it'll be the most played deck in the room. And then, of course, we do have a Gardevoir. Now, Gardevoir isn't going to be the second most played deck by a long shot. Well, Gardevoir is a very powerful deck, and I actually think that it is arguably one of the decks that, if it can, set up, it does have a decent time into Regidrago. But Gardevoir can almost beat anything, to be honest with you, due to how it is built. Of course, having a TM Devo in the deck will help your Charizard matchup. You can experiment with the double monkey, the Mimikyu in the deck, just counters to Regidrago. You probably want to play a tech card for Lugia this weekend, though. And Gardevoir is going to be a deck I'm pretty sure most of the big names will be on. I'm pretty positive a lot of the big names of this tournament are going to be playing Gardevoir. Heck, there's even a chance Tord plays Gardevoir also. Yeah, Gardevoir seems like it's going to be a popular deck this weekend. Not as popular as Regidrago, mainly because it's harder to pilot. You have very long games. You can't afford to tie day one of Worlds, so people might be scared to play it due to those reasons. But there's a good chance that Gardevoir ends up being one of the biggest decks of the tournament, even if it's not the most played. Like, this could maybe be like 5th or 6th most played deck in the entire tournament. But I do think a lot of the big names going to Worlds are going to be playing Gardevoir. That's my prediction. Gardevoir does have a good chance of winning it. I mean, it almost won NEIC. Good chance Gardevoir, if it does pop off and enough big names are on the deck, there's a good chance that Gardevoir could actually win Worlds. So one of my main predictions is that Gardevoir has a good chance of winning the World Championships, mainly because it just kind of does what it needs to do, and it can beat anything in the format pretty handily if it can set up. Next up is Charizard. Now, Charizard has gotten a lot of hype, but its hype has kind of diminished a little bit once people have realized that it's not very good in a Regidrago, and the Guardian matchup is still a little challenging. So people are not as sold on Charizard anymore as they used to be, but I do think Charizard will be fairly popular still. Like, it might be in that top 5 most played decks. Because it is Charizard, a lot of people are just kind of accustomed to playing it. Still a very strong deck regardless. I think the big thing holding it back, obviously, is it does have that awkward Regidrago matchup, but there is a good chance Charizard does see a decent amount of play this weekend at the World Championships, and we'll probably see it do well. At the very minimum, there should be a Charizard in top 16. And, a lot of people who have played Charizard in the past, all these big tournaments, may just run it back again at Worlds. I mean, it's still a strong deck. Again, the addition of Dusknoir, Dusclops is really strong, does elevate the deck quite a bit. So yeah, we'll have to see where Charizard goes. The one thing I'm scared of course, is that Regidrago matchup, and on the off chance Guardy's playing double Devo, and also if Snorlax ends up seeing a lot of play. So there is a little bit of a spook factor there with Charizard, but it's still a strong deck. It's still Charizard at the end of the day, and I'm sure somebody will play it and have a good run with it. Next up is Lugia. Now, outside from Drago, there's a good chance Lugia ends up being the second most played deck, or, it could be the other way around. Maybe Lugia is the most played deck, and Regidrago is the second most played deck. I think one of those two things will probably happen. But yeah, Lugia is looking really good for the World Championships. At the end of the day, it is Lugia, though. It does have its inconsistencies. It does have those bricks sometimes. It is a bit of a pile. But when Lugia is not a pile, when it sets up and everything goes your way, this deck is very much the best deck in the room. There's no way it can lose most of its games. It is debatable on who's actually going to bring it, though, due to the fact that it is Lugia. Like, a lot of your losses can be out of your control due to just how badly this deck can draw sometimes. I can't really say that this deck is going to be a deck that everyone's going to bring, because it's like, it's a chance it's popular, but what are the odds that some of the bigger names actually play the deck due to how, like, inconsistent it actually is, right? Like, do you want to lose games because your hand was Carmine 4 energy and no Archeops, or do you want to win games because you're playing a deck like Charizard or Gardevoir, or even Drago to a degree, where, like, you have the ability to control a game a bit more easily, where Lugia is just like, oh, look at that, my hand is like 9 energy. So that's like my only concern about Lugia, but good chance it's going to be popular. Lugia does boast a pretty good Regidrago matchup. That's a big deal. If Drago's going to be one of the big decks in the room, it's a good chance Lugia will do well. Maybe we'll see one Lugia in top 8. It is a deck that, if enough people do bring it, one Lugia player will have to high roll the entire tournament, which is ultimately what Lugia is. It is a very much a high roll deck. If you're somebody who wants to win Worlds, you might want to build a good Lugia deck that can actually get past the fact that you're going to have to high roll your way to a win in the tournament. But yeah, there's a good chance Lugia could make it to top 8. It's possible. It's most likely going to be one of the most popular decks. Raging Bolt is another deck that I can see being pretty popular. It does have a good Regidrago matchup. Arguably has a better Regidrago matchup than Lugia, because while Lugia can beat Regidrago, usually Drago can beat Lugia if Lugia takes a bit too long to set up, whereas Raging Bolt kind of just does its thing and just blows up Regidrago seamlessly, and actually does have a good chance of just running the deck over a lot more efficiently than what Lugia can do. So Raging Bolt might be popular. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really have like any great matchups other than probably Regidrago. That's about it. Like, you can argue its matchup in a Guardy is pretty bad. Your Charizard matchup is pretty bad. But ultimately, due to the deck's intense like power and pressure that it puts on, especially if you make your opponent go first, a lot of the time you're just going to win games because of that. And honestly, going to the World Championships, a deck like this that can win fast, hit hard, and can potentially beat one of the big decks in the room pretty handily, it's not a bad play for the World Championships. I think Raging Bolt will be in the top 5 most popular decks because it's Raging Bolt. The main question is, will it make it all the way to the top 8 in the tournament? Honestly, it's possible. I can see a Raging Bolt deck get to top 8. At the very least, I think we'll see a couple of Raging Bolts in top 16. That's my prediction. The top 16 will have 2 Raging Bolt decks at the minimum. I don't know if it'll make it to top 8 due to the fact that it is a little bit flimsier and it obviously has more glaring weaknesses. But you know what? There's a chance we could see Raging Bolt make it into the top 8. And of course, we got to talk about Snorlax. Now, Snorlax is looking really good for the World Championships. I think a lot of decks are not prepared for it, or at the very least, it should be ready to beat those decks that are prepared for Snorlax. And like I said, Snorlax is looking like a pretty decent play for the World Championships. The question is, can people play it fast enough to not have a bunch of ties on the board? That's going to be the question. But yeah, Snorlax is looking pretty strong. I don't know if we'll see one make it to top 8. I don't know if we'll see one win. I mean, it would be, imagine the World's Finals as Snorlax, bro. Oof, that'd be the worst thing ever, bro. Snorlax versus Charizard in the finals of the World Championships. That would be the best Championship Sunday video ever. So hopefully Snorlax will make it to the finals. But I don't know. Will we see a Snorlax in top 8? We are at the World Championships where, it is the best of the best, right? The best of the best are going to know what to do against Snorlax. Snorlax can do better at a regional level where the players are, there's more players who are not as accustomed to beating this deck as efficiently. Like, you go to regionals with Snorlax, you have a good chance of winning your first few rounds because you're going to hit newer players who don't know what they're doing and don't actually know how to play against Snorlax properly, don't know how to conserve resources, whatever. We are at the World Championships, and we are playing against the best of the best. I don't know if Snorlax can actually take down. I don't think we'll see a Snorlax in top 8. Hopefully we don't, but I don't think there will be a Snorlax in top 8 because we're at the World Championships. Unless somebody figures out like an insanely broken Snorlax list that can somehow catch people off guard who know how to play against the deck. Because like I said, you're playing against the best players in the world who are probably going to know what they're doing against your deck. They're going to know how to beat Snorlax, or they at least put cards in their deck that give them a better matchup into Snorlax. They know the lines, they know the sequencing. I don't know how good Snorlax is actually going to do. It's good for the tournament meta, but the question is it going to be able to beat the best of the best players? So I don't think we're going to see a Snorlax in top 8. I'm just saying that out of spite because I don't want this deck to do good, honestly, because nobody likes this deck at all. Nobody wants to watch it. Nobody wants to play against it. I'm going to say there's not going to be a Snorlax in top 8. And maybe there'll be one in top 16 at the very minimum, but I don't think top 8. Miraidon does look like it's going to have a decent weekend. Much like Lugia, another deck that just kind of high rolls its way to a good finish. I think that's going to be what's going to happen with Miraidon. At least one Miraidon player is going to make it to top 32 or better. Just because it's Miraidon, it'll high roll its way to a tournament win. If it dodges its bad matchups, like if Miraidon just doesn't hit Raging Bolt and maybe can dodge a few Charizards along the way, then you know what, we might see Miraidon do pretty good. I don't know if Miraidon will make top 8 per se. It is possible, much like Lugia, it can high roll its way to a top 8, especially if Lugia ends up being one of the most popular decks in the room. If enough big name players end up playing Lugia, then somebody who is on Miraidon and has a really good Miraidon 60 can probably run their way through the tournament and do really well. So there's a good chance we could see a Miraidon make it to top 32 or better for sure. It is very possible, especially if it's looking like Lugia is going to be popular. Iron Thorns is another interesting deck. I know somebody's going to play it. Like, Iron Thorns is getting a lot of attention right now in the online tournaments. It's actually won a few of them. It's getting multiple top 8s. This deck is actually pretty popular right now in the format. The question is, will it convert at the World Championships, or is it going to flop? In my opinion, I think that it's most likely not going to do as well. Like, I don't think Thorns will make top 8 or anything. Probably will make like top 32 at best. I do think a couple players might play it. Actually, Ross Cawthon did play Iron Thorns to NEIC, so he was already ahead of the curve on that one. So we'll have to see if Ross runs it back at Worlds. But Iron Thorns is not in a bad spot. I think if somebody builds a really good 60 with the right inclusions and tech cards and whatever, you know, the case needs to be, I mean, we might see an Iron Thorns do good. I think we'll see an Iron Thorns on stream. I'm going to say it right now. Pokemon are going to stream an Iron Thorns game at the World Championships this year. And then we got Dragapult. Now, I love Dragapult, but I'm not sure how good the deck really is right now due to its awkward matchup into Drago and arguably Lugia. Those are your two, like, awkward matchups, and I don't know how good Dragapult is going to do this tournament, but I can say that I can see Dragapult having somewhat of a run. I don't think that many players are going to play a Dragapult deck just because it kind of fell off a little bit in power level, and some of the bigger decks, like I said, bully it a little bit. But I do think there will be a few Dragapults in Day 2 of the World Championships. I could maybe see a lot of the players from Japan playing Dragapult. Maybe it's possible. I just don't know who would play Dragapult overseas here because, like, I just can't think of anybody who would play it, right? It's like, it doesn't feel like it's in a great spot right now, but Dragapult is still pretty strong. It still bullies Charizard. It's not bad into other archetypes, too. And, I mean, it's still, like, a strong attacker. Like, just because you're awkward into these other decks, like, it's still a pretty powerful deck overall. Like, I can still see somebody playing it. And then, of course, Dragapult Charizard, I could see seeing a little bit of play this weekend, too. I love this deck. I'm still trying to make this deck work in the new format, as you might see, but I'm just not sure the deck is all that great right now, just because, like I said, Dragapult and Charizard seem a bit weaker against some of the bigger decks. However, there is a good chance somebody will play Dragapult Charizard and do well with it. I want to see at least one in Day 2, and honestly, the deck is still pretty powerful that I can definitely see a Dragapult Charizard making its way into the Day 2 of the World Championships. I think it is possible that it could happen. I would personally like to see it, and yeah, we'll have to see what ends up going down with Dragapult this weekend for sure. Will it be the highest placing Dragapult deck? Will it be Dragapult Charizard like it was at NEIC? Or will it be Dragapult Pidgeot with Dusknoir with no Charizard? Or will it be Dragapult Xatu maybe? That's another deck that's been getting a little bit of attention right now in the meta. Even though Dragapult Xatu, once again, feels like it's kind of weak just because that Drago and Lugia matchup seem a bit abysmal when there's not as much Charizard. Next up is Ancient Box, another, like, not under the radar deck, but I feel like a deck that's, like, not really getting the attention that it kind of wants right now. But there is a good chance we could see an Ancient Box have an okay run. My issue with the deck is, like, ultimately, you're probably going to lose to Regidrago with they have, you know, Gudra, and even Kyurem Dragapult can cause problems because they can take out a ton of moons at once. I'm not sold on how good Ancient Box really is, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if a few people brought it. Maybe we'll see one make it to Day 2. I don't know if Ancient Box has the legs, though, to make it to a top 32. When you're at the World Championships, you're playing the best of the best. Can Ancient Box make its way all the way to a Day 2 finish? And can it make it to a top 32 finish? Not sure. Like, I don't think we'll see an Ancient Box in top 8, unfortunately. I just don't think Ancient Box has it in it to make it all the way to top 8 of the World Championships, but maybe we'll see one in Day 2. I just don't know how good it really is. Now, Control. Now, I am looking at this Luxray Control deck as kind of the example of a Control deck. There might be more Control decks out there, though, that could do well. Obviously, we know there are players going to Worlds this year who quite literally play nothing but Control to every tournament they go to. And that's probably going to happen again. Like Sander, Alessandro, Cremascoli, they're all going to play Control probably to this tournament. Now, the question is, how will they play it? Will they build something like what Ala Blissey's been playing with Pidgeot and Luxray? Will they go back to the other Pidgeot Control decks from the Twilight meta with, like, the Radzard and the Blood Moon and stuff like that? Maybe Charizard EX Control from, like, LA Regionals might see some play. What do you think could happen at this tournament? I would be interested to know how Control performs, because it does feel like Control is a jack of all trades. There's a chance that any type of control deck can do well. Just question is, what is the best build of it? Is it Luxray build? Is it a different build? Charizard build? What kind of control build is going to do good? I can't really, answer on that. I'm not a control player myself. What I will say is we most likely will see some of those big control player names bring it to the tournament and have somewhat of a good run with it. It is very possible that that might happen. So keep your eye out on the results at the World Championships, because I do think we might see Alessandro or Sander have a pretty good run with a control deck. And I think they're going to think outside the box. I mean, they usually end up thinking outside the box. Like, they will play a different control deck that we hadn't seen before. I think there's a good chance they'll do it again this year. Next up, we got Chien-Pao. So another deck that kind of feels like it's under the radar right now. Chien-Pao still feels like it's not bad. The one thing is that it does is like that 50-50 into Drago. Essentially, the Drago matchup is down to who goes first, because basically what happens is you go second against Regidrago. If they get turned to Dragapult, they're probably going to take out 2 Frigibacks if possible, or Bidoof, Frigi, whatever. Like, they'll take out the 2 6 HP Pokemon. You're probably going to lose the prize trade at that point. If you go first against Regidrago, you're probably going to win the matchup because you're going to get the first 2 prize knockout. You're going to set up at least a Baxcalibur. That's ultimately the matchup. Also, they can cure him you. Like, if you try to bench 3 Frigibacks around Dragapult, they can cure him your Frigibaxes, so that's a bit of an issue. But yeah, Chien-Pao definitely is not in a bad place going to the World Championships. I guess, like, that Snorlax matchup's still pretty abysmal, and if that's going to see a bit of play, that's a little sketchy. But yeah, Pao is not in a bad spot. I can definitely see Chien-Pao being played. I think we'll see a couple in day 2. Honestly, a top 32 for Chien-Pao, it's on the table, in my opinion. If Charizard was a little bit more popular, we probably would see more Chien-Pao. But, like, I mean, looking at the table, that 50-50 into Drago, the decent Lugia matchup, I mean, your Guardy matchup maybe is okay. Maybe somebody will innovate. Chien-Pao, maybe they'll play Pheasantipni in the deck over Bibarel. Is that better? I don't know, but I think somebody might innovate with Chien-Pao. But there's a good chance the Chien-Pao box will be back with Chien-Pao at the World Championships. Gholdengo. So Gholdengo's been doing okay in online tournaments recently. I like this deck. I want Gholdengo to do well. I'm hoping to see one in day 2 of the World Championships. That's kind of my baseline prediction. I want to see one Gholdengo make day 2 of the World Championships. And I don't think Gholdengo is going to have like an insane run, but I want to see one Gholdengo in day 2. That's just kind of my first base prediction. Next up, I want to talk about Lost Box. Now, Lost Box has fallen off a lot, mainly because of Regidrago and Kyurem just being really bad issues for the deck, and just the meta of round Lost Box is not as good. Honestly, though, I'm going to be straightforward with you. I do think Lost Box is primed to have a good run at Worlds. Now, yes, Regidrago is going to be popular, and that is an abysmal matchup. They have Kyurem, they have Dragapult, and Goodra. Like, 3 of those attackers just demolish your deck. Like, and I don't think there's any attacker you can play that can fix the Regidrago matchup. I've tried Roaring Moon. It's just not going to cut it. I think the best way to beat Regidrago is to just be very fast, try to get Mirage Gate turn 1, and hopefully just KO their Drago Vs before they evolve, and you just got to high roll. But Lost Box, honestly, looking at the meta, it's not very different from Twilight. I mean, look at that. I mean, Charizard's still popular. Lost Box, depending on what you play in the deck, can be Charizard. Guardy, not terrible. I mean, we know Guardy's still very close, especially if Gardevoir isn't playing, Double Flutter or Klefki Flutter. It's not bad. If maybe they're cutting the Unfair Stamp for Hyper Roma, or they're playing the Neutralization Zone build of Gardevoir, that's also a good thing for Lost Box. You also got to take into account Lugia is a fantastic matchup for Lost Box. Like, Lost Box seems to be in a decent spot this weekend. I think there will be a few Lost Boxes that do well. I think it's a deck people are going to underestimate, and there's going to be Lost Box players who are going to have a good run. It is very possible. Now, I think the best way to play it is still probably the NEIC winning build, like, with a couple of new cards. I think Pheasantipni is a really good inclusion. Canceling Cologne is another card I would probably add in the deck. When you have the Pheasantipni in the deck, you can basically pull off Cologne combos out of nowhere because you're drawing so many cards in one turn. So I think Pheasantipni, maybe like a Shaman V or like a Raikou, just like another attacker alongside a Fez. Maybe even a Spiritomb is probably going to be the additions we're going to see to the Lost Zone deck. But I do think Lost Box is a very underrated deck for this tournament. I think people are underestimating how good it is. Like, you're taking one bad matchup into Drago, that's it. Everything else seems to be beatable. That's the thing. Like, this has a good chance of doing well at NEIC. People are just not respecting Lost Box right now, and that's a big deal. Like, Jirachi's nowhere to be seen. No one's playing Jirachi right now. If Gardevoir is cutting Cresselia, that's also a good thing. Like, Lost Box is just not being respected. When a deck is not being respected, I think it's always a good thing for a deck going into a major tournament. Sablezard is the other Lost Zone deck I wanted to mention real quickly here. I think this deck is a bit weaker than Turbo because it's not Turbo, right? You're not getting that turn 1 Mirage Gate. Sablezard's cool. You probably have to dodge all the Regidrago in the room in order for this deck to do well. I know you can play like Monkey Dory, double Manaphy to help a little bit against Dragapult or Regidrago, but like if Regidrago uses Goodra against you, like what are you supposed to do? Like Goodra just farms this deck in my opinion. I don't know. I'm skeptical on how good Sablezard is. I think Turbo's a better deck overall, but Sablezard, it could see some play too. Wouldn't be surprised. But the main one is definitely Turbo. I think Turbo's actually like underrated right now. Lost Tina's another deck I've heard a bit of murmurings about doing well this weekend. I'm not sold on it. It's like I get the idea, right? Tina is a very strong card. It has the ability to OHKO Regidrago VSTAR. You can play the Ursuna, the Sableye. Like, you have a pretty good matchup spread. Like, Charizard's not a bad matchup. Your Guardy matchup's pretty solid, I think. But then it's like, okay, well, you're not probably beating Lugia that well. I guess you have Tomb and Temple if you want. I don't know. Lost Tina is like a deck that I've seen some people talk about, and if it sees play this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised. I think somebody might play it. I mean, there's a good chance maybe one will make day two. Is Tina the secret Lost Zone deck to do well? I still think Lost Box is the secret deck that's going to do well. Like, mark my words, if I'm going to make a wild card prediction as to what might make top 8, it's honestly Lost Box. I think Turbo does have a chance to get there, but Tina, maybe we'll see a Tina in like top 32. It's possible. I think somebody might bring it. I want to talk about Turbo Moon, another deck that seems to be okay coming from this new format. Turbo Moon, goes fast, goes hard, knocks stuff out really quickly. I mean, Turbo Moon doesn't seem like it's in a bad spot this weekend. I could definitely see a Turbo Rain Moon deck make it all the way into day 2. Another like high roll big deck like Raging Bolt or Miraidon. I can see Turbo Moon do well this weekend. I can see one player bringing it and have like a top 64 or better finish. It is doable. I also wanted to mention the Dusknoir Teal Mask Weirder deck that we saw at the beginning of the Shrouded format. A deck that I don't know if anyone's actually going to play it. Just like the idea of this like Dusknoir big basic concept could be elaborated a little bit further this weekend. Somebody might cook up more concepts similar to this and do well with it. That's why I wanted to highlight this deck real quick. Also, Iron Valiant Blood Moon has won a couple online tournaments so far. I did a video on it on the main channel yesterday. Check that out if you haven't already. If you want to see some gameplay of this deck. It's not a bad deck. Kind of a sleeper deck. I don't know if it'll see play at the World Championships. Maybe somebody will play day 1. I don't know if it's going to make day 2, unfortunately, but I wanted to highlight it also. And then finally, I want to talk about a Bayonet archetype. Bayonet's another like under-the-radar rogue deck right now that kind of seems like it's in an okay spot. I mean, it's a Gardevoir deck at the end of the day because you're playing Gardevoir in the deck. You have Monkey Dory. You're playing loosely Gardevoir. Like, you're not playing like Flutter Mane or anything in the deck, but you still have like options. There are people that do like to play this Bayonet Guardy deck, and if they play to Worlds, they could make day 2. Like, I wanted to highlight Bayonet. Bayonet seems like another sleeper under-the-radar card that randomly could make it to day 2 at the World Championships. And those are all the decks that I had highlighted here. Meta predictions. The deck that I think has the best chance of winning the tournament arguably is Gardevoir, just because Gardevoir technically is the strongest deck in the room if it sets up, and it can beat Regidrago. Regidrago will be the most popular deck. I can see it being like 15 to 14% of the world's meta day 1. Very good chance Drago is going to be 15 to 14% of the world's day 1 meta. Lugia is going to be probably in that range of like 13 to 14%. It's either Lugia or Drago being the most played deck, by the way, but I think Drago's going to be heavier played than Lugia, because Lugia, a lot of, like, it's not in your control a lot of the time, but good chance Lugia is going to be heavily played also. Good chance it might end up being that 12 to 13%. Gardevoir will probably be somewhere around like 7 to 8%, maybe a bit lower. Charizard will probably be like 6 to 7% of the meta. I can see the top 8 consisting of like Gardevoir. I think one Drago, one Lugia will make it. I think a Lost Box will make it. Like I said, Lost Box seems very underrated this tournament. I don't think we'll see a Snorlax in top 8. Like I said, I wanted to emphasize that. I don't think we'll see a Snorlax in top 8. Like I said, we're at the World Championships. You're playing against the best of the best players. Depending on whether or not you can actually make a good Snorlax 60 that can catch people off guard, some secret tech card nobody saw, I can't see Snorlax making it all the way into the top 8. And hopefully it doesn't, because imagine Snorlax in the finals, bro. That Championship Sunday would put everyone to sleep. I can see Raging Bolt making it top 16 or higher. Like I said, I think 2 Raging Bolt have a good chance of making top 16. Now, the question is, what is Tord going to play? That's the big question. Is Tord going to play Gardevoir? Is he going to play Charizard? Or is he going to play something else completely different? Now, I want to keep that as a prediction myself, because I do think Tord is going to play. If I had to make a prediction, I could see Tord either playing Charizard or Gardevoir. One of those 2 decks is probably what Tord's going to play. That's my Tord prediction I wanted to get out of the way right there. We'll have to see what other top players bring. Like I said, this is my meta predictions. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. What will go down at the World Championships tomorrow down in the comments below. What deck do you think can win the tournament? What deck do you think will be top 8? Do you think there's any secret deck that nobody's thinking of right now that'll do well? Hopefully we see like a secret deck do well. Like, we've seen it before with like Audino, and maybe it could happen again. Who knows? We'll have to see. But I hope you all enjoyed. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. Help me on the road to reaching 16K subs. Check out my main channel down below and all that good stuff. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.